Christina. It's a poem called Recognitions by Christina Isabel. I saw a hummingbird today, standing straight up in space, feathers fluttering so fast to look me in the face. A shimmering suffer of wings, like the Hindu gods of arms and legs and kings, created a thickening in the air, which caused my breastbone to tingle in recognition. She was not bright green and red, but a dull brown with orange sheen, plain but striking as a robin's egg in a nest. She saw me, spun around, dove down straight behind a chair. I could not see her anymore, but my body knew she was there. I am not alone on the web of beings. That struck me so deeply today. Thank you, Christina. This is from our collaboration. I'm not sure I'm showing it. I'll put it up again later, called Everyday Mermaid. We worked, what was it, 5 years on it, more? And that poem in particular has a way of telling me that it's like art itself. You're always seeing the vision. What's that? You're always seeing the vision, and then it disappears, but you keep pushing and you keep working. You keep using your voice, your medium, your tools. I'm going to start by telling you also that the reason I changed to fabric was because of my daughters. So early on, I skipped it. Early on, there it is. I did this whole 20 panels of fabric for my daughter, Gianna, the oldest of 3 daughters. It took 6 years to do the 20 panels, and you can see where I began. This was a concept of working in fabric in a narrative way. I also went to Audubon, the John James? My dyslexia is just happening all over here. I used this raven to push myself, doing such fine things as those claws grabbing around the branch. About, well, probably 3 decades later, I did a hummingbird, and see how that connects with the poem. All those pieces and parts only fell together today, even though I had all of these slides chosen long before. I had this as a commission. Someone had lost their husband and wanted to communicate with them. And I said immediately, no, I'm not going to do a hummingbird. I'm done with birds. I did them, 30 years ago. And I went to the garden and the hummingbird appeared right behind my head. I turned and I said, okay, I give up, I'll do it. Early on, I was working in landscape. This is from our West River, just between Williamsville and Brattleboro. And this is Windham Hill Inn. In a very short time, I began to be more explicit with the medium. I had engaged in doing about a year's worth of queens, Queen of Hearts, Queen of Spades, all of them. And I wanted to work more and more into the flat face that you saw right there. So I was using Anna. She was a neighbor and a friend who posed for me, and I was still using the flat fabrics, thinking, how else can you get away with it? But I then realized the pointillism involved with all of the different textures, prints. That reminded me of my father's work, which is pointillistic. This shows you a great deal of movement from the earlier ones. From Artist with Green Hat was back in 2006. And I would like to focus in on how I would frequently change the color of the threads. So you would see emphasis, highlights, shadows. Still life, I work with quite a lot still. I like setting it up, which is half of the work. You know, is the glass going to be half open, half empty, or half full? Note also that little pink reflection on the glass, which is the back of the apple. It's also picked up on the white napkin. You see the little bit of pinkish coming through. Those things were, you know, just forcing my eyesight. Doing the peaches has actually become a really big thing because we have 2 peach trees, which are lovely to pull from and set up. If you're cutting them, you have to be careful not to cut them until the last few days, otherwise you'll get mush. And garlic, I've been planting garlic and harvesting it for quite a few years. This is a dear friend, neighbor, and a mentor who agreed to pose for me on several occasions. And from that drawing, I was able to make a portrait of her. That drawing gave me this palette, and the palette also came, of course, from my father. The cool yellows to warm yellows, cool blues, cool and such all the way through. You can actually sense her sitting in the middle of that. And the drawing that I did is placed in front of me and I'm eyeballing it. The scissors are a pretty direct way of arriving at a cut. The blades bring in the shape and the contour. And in this case, I'm working probably on the white hair coming forward. Here I'm actually using the scissors to cut in and create a different background, which you'll see later. And this is getting into the fine details. So it's almost like air guitar. I'm cutting in the air, watching and looking closely at the face, bringing the color, the contour right into the piece. Again, I have the drawing in front of me as I'm sewing. And here is the real trick. When you are doing needlework, you're doing a direct line of vision with the thread and the needle and creating a mark behind you, which is the thread you've sewn in. With a sewing machine, you're using your hands in a way that create a line, but you're not doing a direct line. The needle point is between your hands and you're moving it so that you're getting what you want. You're copying, going over the shoulders, over the hair. Here's the palette again. And the first blocking in. I've worked from the background to the foreground. And in this case, I haven't even begun to sew yet. Here I've done a first sewing. You can see it on the background, the top of her shoulders. And I'm beginning to place in what's behind the head, the hair that's going to go, but it's tricky because the hair goes behind her and then onto the shoulder forward. I'm not using any pattern or projection or drawn fixed line. I'm drawing these lines as I look, eyeball my drawing, and I cut freely into the fabric fields. At this stage, it's quite evolved, and that's quite a lot to do at once, but that's how busy it gets. I also want to point out, you can see those very well bent pins, straight pins in the corner there. They're bent that way over use, and also because they go in more easily to the fabric. The layers of fabric accept the bend and don't upset or distort. Notice the change between these two. There's where I was, and here's where I went. I changed the color in the background. There's several ways to do that. It's such a flexible medium. You can move from what it used to be on by simply removing what you started with and putting something else behind it, or you can layer it in as I did here. And this is the completed piece. It's called Clearing, and it was from 1997. It's 13 by 11 inches. Again, a commission that I worked from 2 different photographs. You can see how different they are, taken about 2 years apart. The one in my studio when I first met him, and the one below. And I decided to use a mix of, he has a nice smile on his face below, but he had a greater beard and head of hair on the one above. So I was definitely working off of both of them. This is called Paternal Portrait. And forgive this color jump. That's a lighting situation. It's somewhere in between. This piece is called At Night. The size of it is 36 inches by 48. And it's one of 6 tableaus that depict caregivers and their loved ones who are dying. To see all 6, visit deidrescherer.com. And I think just remember my last name and put D in front of it, deidrescherer.com, and go to end of life exhibits. Maybe you could put that up for us, because I don't think I included it here. I received a wonderful grant from the Project on Death in America from the Soros Foundation. And within about a 2-year period, I had all 6, and they have traveled. And they've been an incredible highlight of my life. I would like to see them end up in a good situation, maybe a medical library where nurses and doctors could learn from them and keep them public. I've done a lot of pieces that ended up on covers. More was on I Had My Life to Live Over. Other books included, and I'll hold them up later, they're Deidre Scherer Work in Fabric and Thread and Everyday Mermaid, which was the collaboration with Christina Isabel, poet, and also the catalog for Surrounded by Family and Friends. This is a recent piece underway of Steve, my husband. It's still unfinished, and these are shots in progress. And this is also a commission that I did for a dear couple who were up in years, and it was quite a privilege to work with. That is my slide presentation, and we could go to questions. I do want to show the books. This is Everyday Mermaid. Do I need to do anything to open up